Let's do something for once. How about that?
Can't believe we're all watching the big game, Jack State and New Mexico State right now.
Chiefs stay undefeated as they roll into the bye week. A lot to talk about what they do next. Let's go.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Welcome into a live edition of the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank, member FDIC, our incredible partners in possible here at KC Sports Network. Wednesdays are Matter Days here on KCSN. This is kind of a fun episode because it's not our traditional game preview. The Chiefs are on a bye week, kind of nice. So we kind of just get some different takes flying with our own pal, Matt Hamilton. Hamilton, what's good?
What's up, guys? How's it going?
Oh man, it's going great, buddy. We're really excited to get into this. Maddie Lane, how you doing?
We're doing good. Unfortunately, the Chiefs don't play this weekend, so there's not, the Chiefs aren't on. But the good news is tonight it's going on, guys. College football is now going on every single day from now until was it like Thanksgiving? Till after the weekend after Thanksgiving, Tuesday night games, Wednesday night games going on right now. It is actually the time of the year for college football, and we could not all be more excited for 55 straight days of football on this podcast.
I hate to break it to you, but I'm locked in on the Royals. I'm even a little locked in on the Royals right now. We got some updates going on the side. Bad news for everyone. Hamilton is a Yankees fan, so we are watching it from opposite sides. So if the Royals start, here's my only hope and my only request for everybody in the timeline or in the chat. If the Royals just start whooping up on the Yankees, we need to get some comments in there. We need to get some trash talking in there about Jazz Chisholm. Matt Hamilton, what's your take on Jazz Chisholm, by the way?
That's not a real name.
Yeah. I've heard some slip ups with his name too that I think Maddie Lynn would enjoy.
What are those?
Kareem Hunt level slip ups. Yeah.
Let's get right into that. Let's get right into it though. We got a chance to look at the Kansas City Chiefs without Rashee Rice. Did some good things offensively. And like I think there's a lot to talk about from that game. But I think, just get off the top. One thing kind of remains, I think, right, is yes, there's some positive signs on the offensive side of the ball, and getting to see Travis Kelce, Juju Smith-Schuster, Xavier Worthy being profiled a little bit differently. There's some good stuff there, but it does kind of feel like this team needs to address that wide receiver position before the trade deadline. What say you, Maddie Lane?
Yeah. So first, we got to kind of, walk it back a little bit here. It's like, hey, Juju Smith-Schuster had a great game this past week against the Saints. And I don't know if any of us feel that that's particularly something that's going to be consistent week in and week out. Like, I just get your take real quick, Hamilton, because, we haven't got to talk to you about that game. Was there anything that you saw from this Chiefs offense versus the Saints that would make you think that they might not need some help at the wide receiver position moving forward, since we now do know that Rashee Rice is going to miss the rest of the season, at least the very least the regular season? Some sources are giving a small window of hope for the Super Bowl. Not happening. But do you have any takes on the Chiefs offense from their performance against the Saints?
Yeah, I think it was definitely a step in the right direction. They looked good. Juju looked phenomenal, kind of filling in that Rashee Rice role of kind of being that underneath receiver for Mahomes and having some big yak plays. So that was a huge positive sign, but absolutely not. I don't think you can sit here and say, just because they had a good game against the Saints, that they shouldn't try to make something else happen. This is the Super Bowl is the only expectation right now, and you can't look at that roster offensively and say, that everything's just going to be great. Because again, other injuries could happen too. Like you have to do everything you can to try to bolster the skill positions. And there are a lot of receivers that are seemingly going to be on the market this year. So I think they have to stay aggressive and try to take a big swing and make something happen, because you can't just count on that every night in and night out from Juju and Travis and Kareem Hunt. I mean, we're looking at, was going back Kareem Hunt's first 100-yard game since 2020, Juju's biggest day, most receiving yards in a regular season game since 2018. Again, we talked about it when they signed Juju. I liked the pickup because I think, last year was more about New England's offense than it was about Juju. He can still be productive, but you can't expect that kind of production. So I do think something else needs to happen here for the Chiefs, and the bye week is the perfect time to get it done.
Yeah. And so I think it's the right way to look at it, right? Like it was a great performance from the Chiefs offense to get what they did out of Kareem Hunt and Juju Smith-Schuster and even Travis Kelce to an extent in this game against the Saints. And while that can still happen, as they just showed you, any given week, any given game, is that something you are going to rely on happening, more times than not throughout the rest of the year and going into the playoffs? And with the only real hope of reinforcements coming being Hollywood Brown, who has not played has played even in the preseason, 2 snaps with this team. So I think that there is still plenty of room to add a more a consistent piece, somebody that you can expect week in and week out to kind of show up and have some level of impact. So I don't think that the Saints game should really alter anyone's opinion on what the Chiefs should do. So with that in mind, I absolutely still stick to my guns that the Chiefs should be trading for a wide receiver, looking around. And I don't think this should be a McCole Hardman-like trade where you're trying to fill out a guy at the bottom of the depth chart. I think that you are trying to get somebody that can step in and be a starter, and not just a starter, but a guy that receives a significant volume, Kent.
I think they should. I think they should go for it. This is, I think the Chiefs have done a tremendous job of roster building, and I understand that they have draft capital. And they like, building this team through the draft. And part of the reason the success that they've had is, that they've hit on draft picks. And when they've had a lot of draft capital, like they did with the Tyreek Hill trade, they hit on it and they kind of built a defense out of it. Right. But yeah. I look at this team and I go, they're 5-0. They got 2 games up on the Bills. They got 1 game up on the Houston Texans, and they put themselves in a phenomenal position to, to let the Super Bowl, a chance at the Super Bowl running through Arrowhead yet again. And Travis Kelce is, you don't know how much longer you have with the Travis Kelce. It could be this year. It could be next year. They three-peat. Who knows what happens? He said he thinks he's got a couple more years of elite play. I hope that's the case. But I see so many positive signs, and I'm sure we'll get into some of those here, with this offense, like the slow build towards the Super Bowl and towards their pursuit of a Super Bowl. But just getting another quality player into the mix here and getting them early so that there's time to build with them, for this time for that chemistry to build, getting them in before the bye, getting a little jump start there could be huge for this team. And I think the Chiefs should be aggressive now. I think they should be looking to try to see if anybody's willing to sell. It might be after this week. There might be some 1-5 football teams out there looking to move on from some players. And I think there's some names we can get to here in a second, but I want to see this team go be aggressive. And, one of those 3rd round picks, I don't think off the table if they need to get done. Depending on who it is, maybe even a second round pick. But I want to see another body, because I do think that this could get scary for teams. They're already 5-0. The defense looks good. They keep putting together great performances on the defensive side of the ball. We know we can see the glimpses of what this offense can be, but just adding another reliable target could really take it over the top. So, Matt Hamilton, I'm going to ask you the question: How many wide receiver trade targets have been interviewed on Kay Adams' show this last summer, this last year?
There've been a few. There's one big one in particular, in Devontae Adams, who, hearing that name thrown out a lot, with the Chiefs connected to it potentially, it's still really hard for me to see that happening, because I think the Chiefs are obviously the Raiders are going to have to eat a ton of salary to make that happen.
Yep.
Which means the Chiefs are going to have to give up at least a second round pick to make that happen. There's also the egos involved. It's really hard for me to see Mark Davis dealing him to Kansas City unless he feels like he's ripping them off, which I don't think Brett Veach is going to go there. So I don't see it. I think he definitely gets moved, and I think it happens really soon, but I don't think it's Kansas City.
Yeah, that one is one of the more far-fetched possibilities that I think has been floated for this. And while on some level it makes sense if you can find a way to make the deal done from the Chiefs' perspective, in that you get this guy that's going to be a volume target eater. He's a clear-cut wide receiver one, and he wins in the areas that the Chiefs most often struggle with when they get down into the red zone. He can beat press coverage. You can put him on the backside of all of Andy Reid's fun 3-by-1 concepts, and he's still actually a threat, unlike some other guys that they have lined up in that spot over the years. So it makes sense. It's just, I have a hard time seeing that, one, the two teams coming to some kind of agreement, but then two, if you're trading for Davante Adams, you're probably going to have to, you're going to have to get a new contract for him. And what are the Chiefs going to pay him going forward beyond this year, even once the Raiders eat some salary? So it seems very unlikely that deal would happen. The only chance the Chiefs might have is if they are randomly willing to spend more than any other team. They just have such the clear-cut best offer. It still seems hard to connect those dots for me.
I think one thing that's going to be interesting is, I do think the Chiefs need to be aggressive. They have the early bye week and they should be aggressive, but how big of a detriment is that from a cost perspective for them, trying to get out ahead of this early, with some teams may not be willing to buy or willing to sell at this point, right? So you have to have two to tango, especially, 6 games into the season. But I think that's something that, maybe the Chiefs have to overpay a little bit for anybody, not even just a Davante Adams, but anybody, if they are going to try to get somebody out early. But I have a few names here of some, potential targets, right? And I'll just ask both of you this question. So you got Darius Slayton, Deontay Johnson, Nuke Hopkins, Amari Cooper, bad football teams, in a vacuum, we're not talking about contract quite yet, but in a vacuum of those 4 I just brought up, who is the player that you would like to see most be a Kansas City Chief wide receiver, just from a fit perspective? Hamilton, what do you think?
To me, it's no question. It's Amari Cooper. With where he is at this stage of his career, he's still one of the best route runners we have. We saw, last year with Flacco, what he was. I can't believe I'm saying that still, but last year with Flacco, what he was able to do with a quarterback that would actually give him chances down the field. He's still a phenomenal talent, and I know you said not to bring a contract, but as far as a 1-year rental situation, you're not going to have to, like Matty was talking about, the Davante Adams thing gets very complicated. With Amari, it's simple. It's a 1-year rental. He'll play this out. He'll try to get another contract in free agency. I don't think it's going to be contingent. Trading for him is not going to be contingent on a new deal. He'll play this thing out. So I love the fit from a player perspective. I love the fit from a contract perspective. I think he would elevate this Chiefs offense tremendously if they make that move.
Yeah, I think Cooper makes the most, just since I know we're not talking contract, he makes the most sense because they designed everything about that contract to be moved. And I still think he's a good player that has completely given up on the situation that he's in. And it's hard to blame him watching, just what's going on with that entire offense. So I do think that while this year looks like a down year for Cooper, you move him to a better situation. I think he very quickly returns back to the Flacco level performances that he was putting up last year. And he does a lot of the same stuff I was talking about with Davante Adams for the Chiefs. Like, he would play a very similar role when in the red zone, beat that press man stuff that they struggle against. So I like him. That's going into this whole thing. If you want to see my entire thoughts on all wide receivers, you can go to kcsn.substack.com. I just wrote an article about this. Actually, this morning it went up there, what I would give up for all these guys, quick thoughts on them all. Going into writing that, Cooper was probably the guy I would have wanted the most. After just flipping through a lot of targets, I'm still a sucker for Deontay Johnson, and I always will be. And I understand. I think the Chiefs technically would have to move a little bit of money or wait an extra couple weeks to fit him under how much cap space they have left. But he's definitely a guy that they could make work if the Panthers are willing to move on from him to try to recoup some draft capital that they have lost over the years, trying to reset their team because they need to reset it again. And just watching him, I think he would fit so perfectly into an Andy Reid system.
Yeah.
The way he runs his routes, the way he can create separation, you can use him to all 3 levels on these crossing routes. I can very easily see him slotting into this offense in a lot of different roles. And it's perfect because he comes with built-in like inconsistencies of dropping wide open passes, of occasionally making mental errors and then making up for it. But he has all that built in already. So you're just, you can expect it as soon as that trade happens.
I think Deontay Johnson makes. Oh, go ahead, Hamilton.
Oh no, I was going to agree. I do think he makes a lot of sense. I do think it's tough because of his contract situation where he is at his career. You're right, like and where the Panthers are right now, it would make sense to move him. I do think there is a little bit of an attachment there, though. I could be wrong, but just from what I felt being at Panthers camp, like I think he and Dave Canales have a really good relationship. I think even he, even with the struggles there, like they look at him as like a piece they can build something around, but obviously when you start losing all these games the way they have, it changes things quickly. But I do think he would be a really good fit there too, and a realistic one given where the Panthers are right now.
Well, and if possible, I would sign a multi-year. Sorry, I know cutting you off again. Just like he's one of the guys, if you make the trade, you could probably sign him given his age for another 2 to 3 year deal. And like you're the Chiefs and you don't feel bad about that. Whereas like Cooper, given his age and probably wanting a little bit more money, it would be harder to have him for more than a year. I think we saw the Chiefs this past year with the 1 year deal to Hollywood Brown. They did potentially want another guy in that room. If you trade for Johnson and it goes well the last half of the year, you now have a guy that you have a little jump start to extend or bring back again for another year. So like, I think that he's a guy that you could target for more than just half the season. And we already know the Chiefs were reportedly interested in trying to get him away from the Steelers during the offseason. So there's just a couple extra reasons for it, but just watching his tape, he really just looks like a Andy Reid type of receiver to me.
Yeah, they felt like they knew how to use him, and that's why they went ahead and tried to trade for him. And I do think he makes a lot of sense as a guy that can move around and run from multiple spots. He can be, I think he can run it. He can run an extra. He can run in the middle of the field, short to intermediate, even a little bit of deep stuff too. Like there's a lot that he can do there. There's a completeness, and I think he would fit in really nice with just the totality of the room. Gives you some insulation, on some of the, some other spots on the field, right? So like I think he could fit in a lot of different places. That gives you a little bit more versatility with what you can do with your receiving group and a little bit more flexibility. But like, I do think it's a good point that the Panthers timeline, maybe they might be back in the quarterback market again in this draft, and they stink out loud. And if they like the Deontay Johnson experience so far, and Dave Canales likes it, and I think Dave Canales is going to get a chance to develop whoever the next quarterback is for this football team, he better, or Dave Tepper's a continually terrible owner. But maybe they want to keep him, and they are the ones that extend him. I wouldn't stun me at all if they wind up being the ones that extend him. So,
I do want to address too. I see, a comment asking about Deontay Johnson being a bad locker room guy, and from my knowledge of the situation and what I've seen and what I've heard, it was one of those things that it ran stale in Pittsburgh. It wasn't working out well. There were a lot of frustrations. Obviously, that offense was horrendous. The quarterback play was horrendous, and there were some frustrations bubbling up. And it was just he needed a fresh start type of a thing. And from what I was hearing in Carolina and what I've continued here in Carolina, he's been a tremendous teammate. He's been super supportive of Bryce, even as he went through his struggles. Like it's been, sometimes you're just in a bad situation and it doesn't work out for either side and it's better for everybody to move on. But I don't think we can label him as like a locker room problem because there were some things kind of, that popped up with the Steelers with that frustrating offense.
And he got that stigma, and like it was like, there's a couple plays where it looked like he had stopped running a route or quitting on a play, and then he gets on Twitter and fires off about it. And like it was after years of dealing with, the ghost of Paul Bunyan playing quarterback going into whatever they had after Ben Roethlisberger. So like, it was tough for him. And everything I have heard though has said like, he's a guy that works really hard. Like he shows up, he goes, he does everything you need to do. So like, it's never sounded like his teammates never like him. It doesn't sound like he's ever been like an active issue. He might pop off on Twitter from time to time. And again, this is a built-in thing that comes with Chiefs players. So we're good.
Yeah.
Aaron Judge just struck out. Speaking of Yankees, Wally Pipp. Isaiah Pacheco, good running back and a player that we've all loved in Kansas City, right? This is one of our, I think he's one of the most fun Chiefs that we've had. The energy that he has is infectious, and he's a good football player. Kareem Hunt has played a exceptional couple weeks here and has had a really good, strong performance since his return to Kansas City. And I think there's a nuanced conversation about the Isaiah Pacheco Kareem Hunt experience. And when both are back in the backfield, I want to know from you, Hamilton, from your perspective, who do you think should be getting the bulk of the carries for the Kansas City Chiefs? Should it be Kareem Hunt or should it be Isaiah Pacheco based on what you've seen in recent memory?
It's a good question. I mean, Hunt has looked good so far, coming out fresh. I still think, to me, I think it's a great issue to have when Pacheco comes back, because I do think, again, we'll see what happens with the wide receiver market and what they end up doing there. But I do think the recipe for this team to have a lot of success is to lean on that run game a little bit and this defense, and being able to have two backs that you can consistently rely upon is awesome. And I do think that's what it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be, we're going to see one guy getting 25 carries a game once Pacheco's there. I think it's going to be a split. And that allows you to keep both of those guys even fresher. So I still think Pacheco, to me, like I still think Pacheco's the guy, but I think it's a heavy rotation with Kareem Hunt.
Yeah, I definitely go back and forth on this a little bit, because Isaiah Pacheco clearly is a more dynamic player, right? He can definitely give you some more explosive plays. He's a little bit younger, so like you would expect him to stick at that level throughout the whole year. And like I think you can even make an argument that Kareem Hunt looked even half steps, less explosive against the Saints than he did the Chargers in that first week, whether he was amped up, whether it was the workload they were putting on a guy coming, essentially off of his couch, whatever it may be, right? I just think that, you would expect Pacheco to be able to keep up his level of play a little bit longer. But man, watching Kareem Hunt run, he just does some stuff that I don't think Isaiah Pacheco can do for this offense. Like, you watch Kareem Hunt and he still has the vision and the lateral agility to change his gap, to press the line of scrimmage, to jump from the A gap to the B gap, and to hit some of these jump cuts that I don't think we've really seen very often from Isaiah Pacheco. And I know Pacheco came into this year a little bit lighter so that he could be a little bit quicker and more agile. And actually, it helped his running style. He no longer seems as angry at the ground when he runs. And so maybe we were going to get there as it continued. But I really do think Kareem Hunt is better at consistently finding space than Pacheco is, even if he's not going to be anywhere near the same home run threat. So I could see it being a pretty solid split. You just let those two guys both run really hard, eat up a lot of carries for this team and see what happens. But I wonder if it comes to 3rd and 2 and they are going to run the ball, if I don't feel more comfortable with Kareem Hunt taking that carry, because I don't think that he's as likely to run into traffic as Pacheco has shown over the past.
And I think that's the point. I think when it's situations where they need to run and everyone knows they need to run, I agree with you. I feel more comfortable with Kareem Hunt with him back there. But yeah, I think, and it's interesting. We haven't seen him really take a heavy workload, in a while, because of the situation he was in Cleveland too. So that could mean, hey, he is able to handle it even at, an advanced stage for a running back. But still, I think the best scenario is a split and you use them strategically.
Yeah, I think Kareem Hunt was running hard at GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium. And GEHA is a proud and caring member of Chiefs Kingdom and wants to give fans an opportunity to be part of the coin toss for their favorite team when the back-to-back champs. You like that, Maddie?
Let's go.
The Kansas City Chiefs take the field this season. Make sure you're right in the action by entering to win a chance to be the GEHA coin toss captain. Lucky winners will be right at the 50-yard line for the coin toss, as well as additional prizes for games against Tampa Bay, Denver, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, and Houston, all coming up. Enter for a chance to win suite access, game tickets, in a once-in-a-lifetime experience with GEHA. All Chiefs fans living in Arkansas, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, and Nebraska are eligible to enter. Potential winners must pass a background check. Contest is open to the public. So here's what you got to do. If you want to get part of this, if you want to enter, go to chiefs.com/GEHA to enter. Real simple. You should Chiefs.com/GEHA to enter for a chance of once in a lifetime experience to be on the field for one of the most electric moments. You know, the fans are going nuts right at the coin toss. People are amped for the game. Make sure you're taking advantage of that opportunity. Chiefs.com/GEHA.
Dude,
We're
I'm
gonna
tipping the
take-
coin
oh.
flip if I'm there. I'm
I'll-
tipping it. I'm tipping the coin flip. I'm letting them know if it's tails or heads.
You're just letting them know. If you get to actually toss the coin, like you just practice strategically to see if you can try to get it to land on.
I didn't think I was going to get tossed it, but yeah, if we're going to do that, then it's even to be a better win rate, better success rate.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break. We'll be back right after this.
Shop Chiefs tickets and more with no fees. Plus, save big with code KCSN at ticketsforless.com, the official ticket provider of KC Sports Network.
With big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. Somewhere between the store and your first month's bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. With Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/KCSNlab. That's mintmobile.com/KCSNlab. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/KCSNlab. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
Thanks, everybody, hanging out with us tonight. A little bye week action. We don't have a game preview, but Wednesdays are still Matter days, and we are very excited about that. Xavier Worthy getting a little bit more opportunity in this last week. I think watching the game back, the Chiefs really did try to feature him a little bit more. He winds up getting 6 targets in the game, and I think it couldn't have even been more. Seeing him starting to get ramped up a little bit, wanting to get him involved, and I think they need to get him involved, Hamilton.
Yeah, they absolutely do. And you're right. There were more things, more things drawn up for him. You saw a lot of that cheat motion with him. They weren't able to connect on a bunch of them, but I think we're going to see more and more opportunities off of that type of stuff. But obviously we saw the creative design in the red zone with that Travis Kelce read option with him. And I love the way he runs the ball, because it's not just a lot of receivers in that situation. They're trying to bounce that outside and just run to the pylon. Mm-hmm. He widened it out and then found the seam and cut that thing up in there and worked his way into the end zone. He has vision like a running back once he gets the ball in his hands, and he really knows how to set up his blocks and find those seams. So it's not just, again, he's not just a speed receiver that just tries to outrun everybody. He really has a good feel for how to run the ball. So again, I know you don't want to give him a ton of carries and put that wear and tear on him, but just mixing in that, maybe mixing in just a little bit more here and there too. Again, also as the season goes on and we get deeper into the playoffs, like, this team knows how to play the long game. I'll say that.
Yeah. And it did seem like it's hard to say that his usage or anything, I think, ramped up a ton for this game, because a lot of it was still the same stuff that he had been doing the previous weeks, but it did seem like there was a little bit more of a specific goal to try to take a couple more shots downfield. And Patrick Mahomes had said that after the Chargers game. They hit the deep shot to him in the Chargers game, and he said, hey, sometimes I see the coverage pre-snap and just decide the deep shot's not going to be there, so I don't even look at it. But every now and then I got to remember that, we can still take these. We can still have a chance at them. So it did seem like some of that was still in the back of their mind. So they did try to push the ball downfield to him. They did use that cheat motion. They ran like a little blaze out kind of thing out of it, and he was open. And Mahomes just kind of, back-footed it and didn't get the ball there. Then they did it again a little bit later, and then I think they ran him on a crosser after. It was the mesh play that I think a lot of people got mad at Mahomes for throwing it behind him, but it was zone. I think Mahomes kind of expected him to sit. So that's the miscommunication stuff you still get between two guys like that. So my bigger thing isn't necessarily that anything ramped up this week. I'm curious to see what his role looks like coming out of the bye week, what it looks like when they give him 2 more, weeks and the extra time after Rashee Rice's injury. Because right now, a lot of it's still, you're fast. Let's see if you can run by a boundary corner. And then we throw the ball up to you. Even if you beat him, you're still kind of getting squeezed into the sideline, which I think we have seen there's been some success there. Not as much as maybe you'd hope, but I don't know if that's the best spot to use him. I think he's going to be better doing the deep overs, the deep crosses, maybe running some posts where you can get him the ball on the move. So coming out of the bye week, do they have more to put on his plate? Because we got to remember, Hollywood Brown went down late in the offseason. Then Rashee Rice goes down. Like Xavier Worthy's role was probably pretty narrow. And then it just needs to get bigger and bigger because of the injuries. I just don't know if they're ready for that on the rookie going into the bye week.
I think they paid a few things off in this game. Like I do think the blaze out off of the cheap motion was a payoff to some of the stuff that they had shown previously. I like that they got him on that little drag route, where Mahomes kind of dead legged it and just lobbed it up over the top to him. And I think we're talking about this game for Xavier Worthy a little bit differently. And we were talking with Maddie about this a little bit. Like if Mahomes just hits that deep crosser, that he's wide open.
Which one?
The one it was like a 3-man route. You had the deep crossers.
No, I know. There was just a second one.
I know.
Yeah.
But if Mahomes looked like he was about ready to uncork that one, and then I don't know if his eyes might have dropped just a little bit. And if he just Giancarlo Stanton hit a home run. If Mahomes just like doesn't drop his eyes, like it's just a fraction off, then I think we're talking about a different game for him. That's a 40-yard reception. We're talking 68 yards, 4 catches, a touchdown, 7 targets, and we're saying things a little bit differently. So I do think, and it's always going to be a little bit more high variance, I think, with Xavier Worthy. I think they need to make it a little bit less variance and get him involved a little bit more here.
Give him some real routes, man. Give the kid some real. I've seen him run enough. I've seen him run enough real outs. I've seen him run the blaze outs, and even going back to college, like I've seen him run real routes. He's not a guy that you have to slap on just a vertical route tree and say, okay, this is what your goal is. Now, I will also say, there was a couple plays where Xavier Worthy, I think, was supposed to be a clear out route down the middle of the field. And he looked a little, not confused, but he looked like he was thinking and processing how to navigate through traffic. And I do think it kind of messed up the flow of the play because he wasn't beating some crossers coming in behind him. There was one play in particular where I think a defensive end actually popped out and chips him. And all of a sudden now he's in the wake of Juju, who's running a little crossing route, and it kind of got everybody tangled up. There was another one where he was supposed to run through the middle of the field and they had some deep comebacks coming on either side of him. And he was behind their pace because he just wasn't sure how to navigate all the zone defenders underneath. So like there's still some stuff he's obviously learning. And I think that's why you slow roll it out. So that's why I have a lot of hope coming out of the bye week, but I do want to see some more real routes. Like I've seen enough 9 routes. I've seen enough fades of him. I know that's in the bag. Can we get something else? So can we get some routes that are breaking a little bit hard? I'm not asking for him to run into the middle of the defense over and over again and get lit up as 170 pounds, but we can do more than what we have so far and see if he can win on those routes versus just kind of being the sacrificial space clear the majority of the time.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, we saw it in college. He can run the whole route tree, and we haven't really seen it yet. You're right. There's stuff he definitely has to clean up some things for sure, and that's going to be, it's a totally different ball game at this level, and there's a lot of stuff you have to learn. Like that's to be expected, I think. But you're right. Just let's see him run a little bit more of the route tree.
I think I think the impact of Xavier Worthy is still felt, though. The Chiefs have shown enough in the vertical passing game that the defenses are honoring it. And if they don't, the Chiefs will make them pay. I think this is still an explosive player that some of the success of Juju last week can be attributed to what Xavier Worthy was doing with the vertical stretch, and Travis Kelce too. So they've done enough at this point to establish, the fun, out there that, instead of just establishing the vertical passing game. But hopefully they can start connecting a little bit more and building off of that role for Xavier Worthy. Patrick LaVon Mahomes had probably his best performance of the season since the Baltimore Ravens game, and arguably better than that one. I think there was a lot of positive takeaways from that game. Hamilton, what did you see out of Mahomes?
Yeah, it definitely was his best game of the season so far. using his legs well, which is always like the confidence. I think it was like some of that confidence and the swagger was back to this offense a little bit. Like not just him, but obviously Kelsey with that ridiculous lateral and all that. So, like that's what you see out of them when they're rolling, when they're feeling it. And we saw more of that. Mahomes. You mentioned the play to Worthy where he gets it up over Cam Jordan. I don't think I feel like we don't appreciate how ridiculous that play was, how tough that is to make for a quarterback and put it in the spot where he did, where Worthy can catch it and run. But there were some missed opportunities too, as you guys were talking about with Worthy. I think there were some plays that were kind of left out there, and I think there's still we're still not seeing Mahomes at peak Mahomes yet. This was a positive step, but we're still not totally there yet. Maddie, do you agree?
Yeah, it's hard because it's hard to look at Patrick Mahomes and not think about him and try to evaluate or grade him on the Patrick Mahomes scale and not just hey, how are you playing right now in terms of just a regular NFL quarterback scale? Because if we're just comparing him to the rest of the league, yeah, he's maybe not playing as well as some other guys around the league, but he's still, this game in particular puts him right back up there towards the top, because I thought that he was under pressure a lot, especially early in the game. And I think that clearly messed up some stuff, and it made him start to feel a little bit more uncomfortable. And so you saw him scramble on some third downs, especially when if he keeps his eyes up and tries to move around in the pocket, that's where some of those plays that were left out there. Like, hey, if you just move in the pocket here, you probably can hit a bigger play than the 8-yard scramble that does pick up the first down, though, right? So how hard can we complain about it? I think we're moving in the right direction for Mahomes, right? I think Kent's going to talk about it a little bit. He specifically tried to stay in the pocket a little bit more, right? Like that was a goal you could see. I don't know if he felt comfortable doing it because he looked a little frantic sometimes trying to, but he was trying to. And I think that was a big step. There was a couple plays still where that left side, and even Jawan Taylor struggled in this game. So it's coming together. It's getting there. I agree with your very first point, though. He was playing confidently, right? Like he was making some throws that I think he maybe would have made in the past few weeks. He would have pulled down. He would have second guessed himself and thrown out a couple extra pump fakes and tried to run. So it's trending in the right direction. And this was probably the best football he's played since the first half of that Baltimore game. Like he came into the year throwing confidently with his chest. They were trying all these different windows, and then now we've kind of slid back, but it looks like he's on his way back up. And the more he trusts the guys around him to make plays, I think that only continues.
Yeah, I look at this season, I think in the pivot away from, Mahomes gets dropped into a phenomenal situation, hits the ground running with that kind of first wave with Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. They go invest in Sammy Watkins. They got a really good, solid offensive line. And we've slowly pivoted away from kind of that version of the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes on a rookie contract to every single year. This becomes more about Mahomes, how you manage the cap, how you manage all this stuff becomes a lot more important as you're trying to build a team around him and keep good players. And, so I think last year you saw a little bit, I think was the first revelation of kind of the slog of that, right? With contracts becoming more tight and, needing just to simply rely on your rookie contract players in a different way. And I think you saw a process that played out as this team struggled through a lot of different things last season, but you saw ultimately this team find what will win them football games as they worked through a lot of different things. There was, it was experimental almost to a degree with what they were trying to do with some of the receivers and giving them, giving certain guys a longer leash and all that. So I think you're seeing the same thing again a little bit this year right now, where, the Chiefs are trying to go cheap at left tackle, and they've got a great interior offensive line, and they've gone through some issues here with the two top receivers you anticipated having. They're now out for the season or most of the season. And I think it's funny that we're kind of laughing it off a little bit, just like a little, not laughing it off, but like we're acknowledging, hey, this team definitely still needs a receiver, even though there are still a lot of positive signs. And I think the pain of last year has put them a little bit farther ahead than they were this year. Now that doesn't, this is where Matt is, what we're talking about a little bit earlier. I still think that this is a process. This is a process for him. he's got to be comfortable with Wanye Morris. He wasn't as comfortable with Kingsley Suamataia. That might have affected some things there. Now we go to Wanye Morris, and he's trying to give that pocket a bigger a chance better than he has for the entirety of the seasons. He's hanging in a little bit longer than he has in some of these games. He's trying to hang out in the pocket a little bit longer because, he has plays that can be made when he's giving the structure of the play a little bit more of a chance. And so he's, he dropped his eyes a little bit quick on some of these plays when he's hanging from the pocket, but he's trying to hold in there a little bit longer than he has in recent memory. And so I think this is just this is part of the build. We went from a little bit more antsy and a little bit lack of comfort where that wasn't the issue, I think, last week. I think, or, against the Saints, I think we're starting to establish more trust with that offensive line. Next step, finding ways to get, Xavier Worthy more consistent opportunities, more consistent targets, right? But you saw the Juju stuff working. You saw Kelsey working. I think he played outstanding in a lot of different ways. The throw to Samaje Perine when he's scrambling around, like that was a vintage Mahomes play. And I think Samaje Perine stopped. If he doesn't stop, that's a touchdown. He thought, he wanted, I think Samaje might have stopped because he thought he was going back line, somewhere back there. But I really walked away just from that game. Like there's a lot of good there, and there's a lot of the building blocks there for this thing to continue to get better and better and better. And I think this team is showing a formula for winning football, and they just got to keep, keep grinding it out. That's what the regular season looks like for Chiefs fans now, Maddie Hamilton.
And that's the other thing too, is, not that the Colin Saunders play was was ridiculous, but like we still haven't seen him go through a game without a turnover yet, and they're still 5-0, and he's going to find a rhythm at some point that's a little bit better than this. We saw it, even with all the struggles they had offensively last year when it was time to lock in the playoffs, he was almost went through that entire playoff run mistake-free.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a time to experiment, to try some different things out. As you said, you're working all these new guys in with all the injuries. So eventually we're going to get to a point where those turnovers stop. And even with the turnovers, they still haven't freaking lost. So, again, we're evaluating him on the Mahomes scale, and he's not at peak Mahomes yet, but still some pretty good football.
Yeah. And it's something that's going to get better as the year goes on, right? Like, I think we all agree with that. He's going to continue to get better as the year goes on. My, I guess, frustration with watching it right now is a lot of what happens, what seems like in the flow of the typical play call, a traditional play call, they aren't progressing. He's not progressing to anything downfield at all. Everything that comes within the flow of a play is either essentially Kelsey or Noah Gray on some kind of comeback route over the ball, or it's a shorter route, under the sticks, 5 yards. That's why it's A.dot so low. Anytime they push the ball downfield, it seems like specifically designated to be a shot play. They aren't really getting to anything, even to the intermediate areas off of just like basic play calls. So that's where I kind of would like to see that come back. And I understand that teams are trying to take it away. And to Kent's point, there's a lack of trust coming off the left side. And I'm not certain. We always go to the left side. I'm not certain Patrick Mahomes loves Jawan Taylor and how the way he and Trey Smith leave a little bit of a gap between them and their sets just because they set so differently. There's a lot of pressure that spikes inside of Jawan Taylor sometimes. Like, I don't even know if he feels super comfortable with him at right tackle compared to, having Mitchell Schwartz there in the past, or even Andrew Wiley, who was a little bit more stout. So it's a learning process. You just would really like to see them be able to threaten downfield, and not way downfield, but the intermediate areas within the structure of a play a little bit more. And hopefully that comes. Hopefully that comfort level comes and he gets there. And I also think adding a receiver that wins in those areas regularly would probably be beneficial to that. Or in the red zone when the space is condensed and, you can't get a 3-level flood to one side of the field that the Chiefs like to get. That's kind of hard to get when you're on the 5-yard line. So maybe go get a wide receiver that can beat that guy, and then we can let Mahomes feel, play a little bit more space.
Yeah. And you look at I pulled up the passing chart. 1 attempt over 20 yards, just 3 attempts overall that were over 15 yards. So there's a lot of that field still to use. Yeah.
All I keep coming back to, and this is why I just feel like if last year didn't tell you anything, it's a lot of the struggles, frustrations, and things that we notice on the outside, they acknowledge and they know too, because they got better at a lot of the things that kept them from having success last year offensively. and they trimmed the fat. They got rid of it. They eliminated a lot of the turnovers. And by the way, they started hitting deep passes a lot more in the playoffs. And like, I do think that there's enough of, the experience last year, I think, is going to pay off dividends as they're working through this year. And I already think that this looks a lot better than it did last year at this point in the year. So just keep working through it. And Andy Reid always uses the comment, keep working it. That's exactly what this team is going to do. And I do feel confident that because of what we've seen over this, last few years, that this team is going to find some success down the field, and it's going to be sooner rather than later. We've talked a lot about the offensive side of the football here. But Matt Hamilton's here. We got to talk about a Mizzou made guy. Nick Bolton had yet another really strong performance against the New Orleans Saints. He's building. He keeps stacking those games together. Hamilton.
He really does, and I thought he was, he was aggressive getting the ball carrier. I thought he was really able to take advantage of the Saints center issues in that game without Cesar Ruiz in there. But he was flying to the ball. This Chiefs run defense, we've been talking about it week after week. They have shut down every top running back in the NFL. I feel like, Kamara's been on a scorching pace. Obviously, the Saints having some offensive line issues is definitely a factor there. But once again, this run defense faces a top running back and rises to the occasion and just completely shuts them down, takes them out of the game.
Yeah, and like the run defense overall, like from top to bottom, it's really good. The way the Chiefs are structured, it's not like they sell out to stop the run either, right? Like it's something that they play their defense. They're going to match lighter personnel with nickel a lot. They're not going to sit there and load up the box, but they're still stopping the run. It starts up front with the D-line, obviously, but I really do think these last few games here from Nick Bolton, we've seen him get healthier, but then also like he might be playing some of the best football of his career. And like I know 2 years ago, the last year he was in with injuries up and down. 2 years ago, he had a super strong season, but I still thought there was a lot of chasing plays down from behind. He was getting in on tackles a little bit downfield. He was kind of having to go around blocks to get there. And this year, right now, especially in this game, he does seem like he's triggering downhill a little bit earlier. And some of it's going to be the called run blitzes, right? Like Steve Spagnuolo loves to call run blitzes on early downs, but it takes a good player. Like, you still got to execute. You still got to shoot the gap. You still got to see what's happening. You still got to make the play. And Nick Bolton's been excellent at doing that when it's dialing him up. I thought he's shown a pretty good job getting out to the edge when teams have tried to run some outside zone stuff on them. We saw it against the Falcons, stuffing them on the fourth down. You saw it a couple times against the Saints. I just think he's seeing it really well in the box right now. And you go and look at the coverage stats. They're not great. And there's always going to be a couple plays. And it always is on replay where you see Nick Bolton like frantically waving his arms, trying to figure out like which route he's getting passed off to. And I'm not saying it's in a bad way. It's just like he gets where he needs to go, but he looks like he's a little lost for a second. But then you go look at everything and like, yeah, he might not defend a tight end one-on-one, in man coverage when he's coming across the zone, but you watch the Chiefs and you throw any guy out to the flat, any wide receiver, running back screen, Nick Bolton's the first guy, triggering downhill on it. He's the guy that's making the first contact consistently. So I do think the Chiefs have done a good job kind of shielding him from having to showcase all of his coverage skills or like shortcomings, but also allowing him to play aggressive and downhill versus the run of the pass. And like, it's been really impressive these past few weeks to see how much better he's playing than he was since that very first game of the year.
I think one thing that, with this team in like the last 4 years in this defense, Nick Bolton's been a part of the last 4 years. And, a lot of this core has been a part of this defense the last 3 years at least, right? This is the third season for that vaunted 2022 class. And there's just a lot of confidence. And Steve Spagnuolo seems to be calling games with a lot more confidence early season than even you've seen in recent memory. It's just because there's so much equity built up with this team. And a lot of that ties to his confidence with Bolton and what he's calling and how he's getting these guys aligned. And those are the things that, yes, the coverage stuff isn't always great. And there is definitely some shortcomings there, and that that's tough to handle at times, right? But they're getting into the right coverage calls, they're getting to the right coverage adjustments, and that's because they've got a really smart football player there playing the linebacker position for them and doing a really great job against the run as well. So I think he's putting together a really strong season. It's going to be fascinating to see what the Chiefs do with him from a contract perspective, if they're going to keep him, how much they're willing to pay for that, right? Because it's going to be a very nuanced conversation, I think, when that all goes down, because how do you pay a guy that maybe has coverage shortcomings when the top backers in free agency are the guys that typically have some of the kind of game-changing coverage chops. But Bolton's got a lot of other things beyond just, some of those struggles there. And that's going to be a fascinating conversation. But if he keeps doing this and doing what he's doing, he is going to make himself a lot of money in Kansas City or somewhere else. That is going to do it for this episode of the KC Laboratory. Thank you all so much for listening, watching, supporting. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll catch you later.
Hook 'em.
Go Royals.
Yo, Bobby Witt finally got a hit.